If you live or work in the San Francisco Bay Area region, you are likely aware that the area is prone to earthquakes and also possibly tsunamis, both of which from time to time can be devastating. But there are other more common emergencies and disruptions that affect our communities and day-to-day business as usual. The danger of wildfire is ever increasing as drought or near-drought conditions continue in California. Storms have the potential to flood low-lying areas and to cause landslides. There are momentary failures of our critical resources like power and water. And there are human-caused disruptions like public protests, celebrations of our local sports teams, or the damage and disruption caused by those who would promote chaos and terror. Each of these examples has one thing in common. That is the way that they potentially affect the community as a whole, and the way in which the community as a whole is needed to effectively respond. The idea of whole community response has blossomed as an underlying tenet behind effective community response since Hurricane Katrina in 2007. Whole community response means engaging all assets that a community has to offer to meet the myriad needs of the people in that community and to help them return to a sense of normalcy. This includes those assets and capabilities belonging to government agencies, as well as those belonging to community and faith-based organizations and local businesses. Just as businesses have a unique and important role in the economic and physical health of the community to which they belong, they also have an important role in community disaster response and recovery. Aside from traditional volunteering opportunities with organizations such as the Red Cross, Salvation Army, or local food banks, businesses can and are encouraged to engage with local government offices of emergency services or departments of emergency management. Knowledgeable and trained private sector partners can participate in local emergency management through private sector advisory committees and as part of a business operations center, or BOC, within an emergency operations center, or EOC. Through 2013 and 2014, the Bay Area Urban Areas Security Initiative, UASI, and the California Resiliency Alliance partnered with Bay Area offices of emergency services to develop private sector advisory committees, PSACs, designed to establish robust and sustainable relationships before they are needed. 3 printed guides were created to assist local government emergency managers in cross-sector partnerships. Those guides include a strategic plan to help establish and direct the work of a private sector advisory committee, a business operations center activation guide for private sector BOC representatives, and a business operations center activation guide for public sector EOC staff. These 3 guides detail processes and advice for establishing long-term and/or ad hoc BOCs in local government emergency operations centers, EOCs, as well as the ongoing operations of a PSAC. Each guide has an accompanying introduction video. This video summarizes the strategic plan coordinating a private sector advisory committee. The strategic plan introduces the concepts, functions, and structure of a business operations center and a private sector advisory committee. It provides examples of how each can support a jurisdiction's emergency planning and response. The first step in building a successful private sector advisory committee is engaging the agencies and businesses that are key drivers and supporters of the local economy. Government representatives may include those from the Office of Emergency Services, first responder agencies, economic and workforce development, and public health. Business interests can be represented in many ways depending on the nature of the local community, including community-based small and medium-sized businesses, key employers and industries, and those businesses that provide essential services and ensure the operations of critical infrastructures like power and water, often owned and operated by private sector organizations. The Private Sector Advisory Committee, PSAC, is intended to facilitate ongoing collaboration between businesses and local government in planning for emergency response and recovery. Numerous benefits to cross-sector collaboration are outlined on pages 7 and 8 of the strategic plan. The PSAC provides a platform for public and private sector partners to build relationships, collaboratively identify gaps in response and recovery planning, prepare to effectively leverage private sector capabilities and resources, and share information on an ongoing basis. Planning with cross-sector partners and focusing on specific goals, in addition to sharing information, creates resilient public-private partnerships, strengthening community emergency response and recovery capabilities. As indicated at the bottom of this diagram, developed by the National Research Council and in the accompanying information on pages 9 and 10, institutionalizing a sense of purpose and opportunities for committee members to succeed leads to continued collaboration and participation, allowing for participant buy-in and a sense of ownership. Pages 10 and 11 of the strategic plan outlines recommended steps for developing a private sector advisory committee. These include identifying a committee chairperson, often from within the Office of Emergency Services, who will conduct the initial outreach and facilitate the committee meetings. It is recommended that advisory committees meet at least once every 2 months. The group should collectively brainstorm and choose feasible projects that would strengthen capabilities for community disaster response and recovery. It is important to remember that as part of a public-private sector partnership, members may have access to sensitive information, both about resource gaps and company and government operations. It is essential that the participants behave in an ethical fashion, keeping information that may be disclosed during the course of the discussion and the planning work confidential and between those participating in the planning teams. The strategic plan represents several ideas for cross-sector collaboration activities on pages 13 through 16 to strengthen information sharing, including cross-sector communications and social media training, economic resilience and recovery, such as identifying priority routes and infrastructure interdependencies, resource and logistics support, including identifying local resources available during emergency response and recovery, and recruiting Private Sector Business Operations Center (BOC) representatives. Some activities already underway in Bay Area jurisdictions include development of communications and credentialing protocols, Business Emergency Response Team or BERT training hosted by local companies, and the identification of available resources, like this example from Cal OES Business Operations Center. Planning tools are provided in Section 6 of the Strategic Plan, including an activity prioritization matrix to help PSAC participants prioritize activity ideas and an activity plan template, which may help PSAC members to further plan and determine the feasibility of an identified activity. The strategic plan is a guide for coordinating a private sector advisory committee and establishing its goals. By applying the principles introduced here, you can develop robust and lasting public-private sector partnerships. Please use the tools provided and example memoranda of understanding as appropriate for your jurisdiction. In January of 2012, at the International Disaster Conference and Exposition, FEMA Administrator Craig Fugate described the whole community approach when he said, "Why is it 1 minute after the disaster we think government is going to do everything? The more goods and services that the private sector is able to provide to meet the needs, then the more that government can focus on the most needy and vulnerable areas. I think this is a hard lesson for us to learn in government. The bigger the disaster is, the less likely you're going to control much of anything. It takes a team." This video has summarized coordinating a private sector advisory committee strategic plan that provides guidance for developing ongoing public-private partnerships. This guide is helpful for both public and private sector partners in establishing a private sector advisory committee. The next two videos in this series accompany the Business Operations Center, or BOC activation guides, one for public sector staff and one for private sector partners that will participate in the BOC. These describe the role and makeup of the BOC and provide suggestions for establishing a BOC as part of an emergency operations center. With the 3 written guides and accompanying videos, you are armed with the tools to establish robust and resilient partnerships that will facilitate a whole community response and a more effective recovery from disruptive events.